It's perfect, I think. Time to ship it. So here's what this actually looks like. And what this represents is a culmination of everything that I currently know about texturing, shading, lighting, and animation. The idle animation is something I threw together right near the start of my attempts at this. It's not great, and I think over the course of this I'm going to try and improve it. The other stuff that you're seeing, if I zoom in on the scene here, I've got this wallpaper. So, as part of making my life as easy as I can, I'm going with fairly repetitive textures. A lot of different wallpaper styles is the thing I have in mind. For reasons that will become clear, but I think it provides a neat theme, an exploration on various themes. You can have whatever, you can have Art Deco, Art Nouveau, whatever this weird flowery arrangement I'm seeing in front of me is. And in order to do this, what I've done is I've given it a degree of specular lighting. So if I start moving this point light around, where did that go? I attached it to the table at one point, but oh, there it is. It'd be difficult to tell, especially when the light disappears behind the world. I don't know. You just gotta kind of trust me that it's there. I'm sure other things will be more clear, but yeah, depending on where you are, you can see that more or less. And just to show off how I did that, for what there is, I've got this wallpaper material. I guess I'm slightly aghast that it doesn't look quite this vivid and exciting when applied to an actual plane, but you know, you can see what I'm talking about. They all have this kind of raised feature, and all that is applying a normal map to it to give it the appearance of being more than just a 2D texture. So what I did for that is I first of all created the wallpaper, which just looks like that. A square with some noise, a neat spiral with some petals, and then I created a normal just from the grayscale. So if I get rid of that and I put it back to a texture, that's all that looks like. So that's a height map where the white is the highest point and the black is the lowest point. So I'm working with very, very simple maps. I'm not putting too much effort into how they look. And I'm letting the engine do most of the work for me. So I'll tweak that around, maybe give it some more bumpiness. I was getting some weird results at different times. There you go, maybe that's a bit better. Maybe. Well, that's something anyway. Yeah, as I said, like on the view it looks absolutely bizarre. It now looks kind of like the wall is curving. So there's definitely a bit of tweaking to do about that, but that's basically all that I need to know in order to, you know, get around town doing all the other bits. My other attempt, so this thing is a mesh renderer and a filter with that material that I laid on. I've also got this table that I shaded. You can see it kind of looks like a shaded table. The light hits the top. There's a bit underneath where the light doesn't hit, that's vaguely shadowed. It curves. As you move it towards the light, it gets brighter and dimmer because it's a point light in space. I mean, how I'm going to actually do the lighting, not yet decided. But that roughly works like a table should. It's quite nice. And it's got collision and everything. The chairs are not textured. Off it goes. So in order to create that, I had... Yeah, so I have various bits of furniture assets, which when zoomed in on, yeah, you can see there, I've got this stove, vase and such, and the table's got a normal as well, which just looks like... Nope, that's not right. It was around here somewhere. I swear I had all the parts. Furniture normals. There you go, that exists. It's going to open a new program. I'm sorry. And yeah, that's using exactly the same thing. It's just a gradient where the center of the table is obviously the closest to you, so that's going to be white, and it's going to disperse evenly along the side. So yeah, so it looks like that. Never tried to zoom in with this program. There we go. So you can see how those two very simple bits very quickly combine to create something that looks roughly like a table. So now that I've done it once / twice, I can do it an infinite number of times is my idea. So that actually uses a sprite renderer, and the element is this legacy shader. Oh my goodness. A legacy shader that uses specular lighting, as in the light. Specular means like mirror, so it's the sort of mirror sheen that you get. I tell you, since I've been making this, I've been seeing specular lighting in everything, just staring at glasses of water and going, wow, who'd have thought there'd be so many points of light refracting and reflecting off that. I'm so glad that this work has been done for me. So yeah, the current shaders don't seem to work too well with 2D. I am actually butting against the limitations of the engine here, which I didn't expect to do so soon. But it seems that as new versions have come out, sprites have a tendency of just sort of turning to black. So, for instance, my person, all of their bits are currently have this sprite diffuse, which works quite well. So the thing with the sprite shaders is that they're visible from the back, but as you can see, okay, you can't see because I got rid of it. The table does not exist from the back because it's using this legacy shader that's not 2D, and I couldn't get any of the 2D ones to work. If I try and do that, can I just select it? Nope, doesn't work. If I grab the table, this one, and I start messing with what this is using, so if I, yeah, so sprite diffuse works alright, but I can't apply a normal map to it. Don't know if there's a way of fixing that. If I do standard, then this happens, which is bizarre and not what I want at all. And there doesn't seem a way of sort of making the mesh realise how big it's supposed to be. Yeah, and nothing else seems to quite work. I followed a guide online someone had put down for another game, and that worked well enough. So there you go. That's what I'm using for now. I think it looks okay in the scheme of things. And once I get like the light balance and stuff sorted out, and the best thing about this is that I can tweak all the objects as much as I want. So that was me waffling on about textures and lighting and stuff, and I'm fairly happy. I can't wait to do this stove because the inside is deeper than the front of it, so that's going to end up looking quite interesting. And the whole design, so I've tried like starting on a degree of level design here. The other thing of note is the animations then. So if I grab my player, so you saw there was a bit of a dodgy idle animation. The sort of thing that I'm going for is I guess this. Here's an example of a climbing animation. There you go. It's kind of slow. The end kind of tails off. I also did one for sort of flipping around. The fact that the what is this kind of disappearing? I want this to be a mesh that I can transform on the fly during animations. I'm not quite there yet with that, but I'm not far off. I've got some ideas. So a further animation is this kind of really janky flipping around, but like this didn't take very long to make, so I'm fairly happy with the notion that I can create some more. So to give you a decent idea of what I'm actually trying to do with the movement for this game, I'm just going to switch to this. Here we go. So when we're standing on a ledge, this is us standing on a ledge. What I initially wanted was something that allows you to move around, not entirely freeform. I want you to be able to move around with a massive degree of fluidity and confidence in the actions that you're going to take and the results that are going to arise from them. So the way various, I don't know, platformers encourage you to hone your precision jumping skills, and I want you to be able to just with one hand move yourself around and not worry overly what that's going to do, like with two fingers basically. I mean, I played a lot of like Abe's Odyssey growing up. That was brilliant, and that got past it by having different steps that you could take and everything on a grid. And the latest re-release sort of did what I'm doing here, but kept a lot of the platformeriness, which I'm trying to leave out and turn it more into, turn the platforming itself into puzzle making, if you see what I mean. So if you come up to here and you're running up to this edge, let's say there's an edge above you, and as you just saw with the flip animation, what I want some way of just instantly going and positioning yourself on top of it. But what if there's something below you? You should be able to drop off as well. But what if there's something to the side? You should be able to drop off and then switch it, and consistently and confidently know that you will land on a ledge positioned below you. If there isn't a ledge, you should be able to swing yourself and land somewhere down here, hopefully. You should be able to jump across by just not choosing down or up when you jump, but walking to the edge should be automatic. And in turn, if you start jumping and you go, actually I'd rather go down here, you should be able to just switch on the fly. Actually I want to swing off the edge and go left, you can do that. Or you can just keep on dropping. You can drop in an arc if there's no platforms available, which I think covers about all the bases. And I'm very aware that a fluid motion to your character is vastly important in any sort of decent game. The honing, for instance, on the Mario 64 is renowned for how much effort they put into getting it exactly right before they started, like, in earnest designing levels. Before that it was just messing against various bits of geometry. So I've got the up bit pretty much how I want it, and also ledges that are on the side won't have you like flipping up them. I guess what this comes from is the biggest hobby that I have, that I pursue most sincerely, is rock climbing, and I want to kind of channel how I move around to some extent. I'm very fluid in my motions. If I see a gap in a wall, I will opt to leap the wall instead of go through the gap. So I don't want vast climbing mechanics or anything, but I want to give a sense of that. I want someone who's very light on their feet, very knees bent, very ready to jump around at any motion, any opportunity. We're not quite there, but it's going to happen. Yeah, so for instance, have that like instantly roll into an animation that allows you to link together further movements and so on and so forth. And yeah, move with confidence. So right now I'm going to have a go at fixing this animation, and that will hopefully show off some more of that. So with the player selected in the hierarchy, I can go to animation, and all of this already exists. So if I zoom right in, I put in a script to show off the bounding box. This went through a lot of different changes, way too many. This took an awful long time to work out where to put the objects of the player in order to have them animate correctly, because jumping up on ledges requires this pivot, which is located, you can't really see it against this background. There's a square here, which is the pivot point. So as they jump, the pivot attaches and then they rotate around it. Because I found trying to rotate around their hands, for instance, would cause everything to get out of sync. So that means that the pivot needs to be a parent of the script with the controller and the motor and the collider that picks up on everything. But then I found that climbing up walls and such Originally I had it in a 3-step process, so you'd press jump and they'd snap to this this vertex, and then they'd go up and the base of the player would be here, snapping to this vertex, and then they'd move, their X coordinates would move and they'd be on top of the ledge. 3 steps, 1, 2, 3, 3 animations to do it. I thought it sounded completely simple. Then when I tried like rotating and such and timing the animation so that it would work, and snapping it and making sure that the movements didn't happen without the animations falling behind and all sorts, it was an absolute nightmare. I had various ingenious ways of doing it, but they just didn't pan out in the end. At one point I had we snap to here and then we instantly teleport the box, the player position up to here, but we leave the actual sprite back where it started, so that for all intents and purposes nothing's happened, but their positions actually moved on top of the ledge, which means you don't have to worry about the collision or anything anymore, or where they're going to end up. But then syncing them with where they had ended up was just as hard. It was really hard. So now what I've got is, like, I don't know when this occurred to me, but the position is actually governed by the animator, which means that the animator actually sits on the player 2 levels above the box and the scripts that are actually doing the controlling. So these actually call the transform of the player to parent higher and say, oi, you know, start playing this animation, wait until this happens, are you still running, don't release control or momentum until then, all that sort of thing. So that's my current setup. It took ages, but it works well now. I think it will work for all my purposes. So anywhere in the player we have this, and if I start scrolling between them, so it starts this only has 5 keyframes, and as I go it loops around all the way around. So I used Sprite and Bones, which is an excellent little thing for presumably things other than what I'm actually trying to do. You can rig a 2D sprite with a skeleton and move everything around with inverse kinematics, which I haven't bothered to look up exactly what that entails. I guess kinematics is things moving with a certain amount of kinetic momentum, and so inverse kinematics is like stuff responding to things that it is attached to rather than influences from the outside world, which means that if you move a hand, the rest of the arm should follow, and then the shoulder, and then the whole body maybe, depending on how much you've got in the chain. That didn't work for me. I found that the bones just splayed off. I think my sprite's too fine. All the bits are a little bit too like this leg is the way that the leg joins to the at the knee is too precise. So the skeletons was just ripping it apart. I spent a few hours working out that I really couldn't go that route. So I'm doing it kind of the default manual way, which is working well for me, honestly. So if I take this first keyframe and I say, hey, I've decided this person is too upright and they're also like they're bent or weird. I'm going to, well, first of all, I'm going to scrap the rest of this animation because it's like it utterly meaningless at this point. It's not what I want. Okay, so now I've got this. I'm going to grab like this thigh and just rotate it around. So I can put it there, for instance, and now the foot's all flat. I can take the right thigh, do the same, grab the leg, rotate it a bit. We got to get this these hips and such kind of rotated again, and I don't know. I've used a lot of references for how to adequately position a person so that they look human. I've genuinely filmed myself kind of rolling off various objects because that's how I move. Like, I do it all the time, so it just makes sense to apply that sort of thing. And I can move these things around. It's I'm trying to shift the sprites around as little as possible, their actual position, because that causes all sorts of weird things. And maybe their arms are a bit lower, that they're a bit more on alert. So there we go. Anyway, that's as just an example. That's a way of doing it. Whoops, clicked off the player. That's what will happen. Okay, we're back. And then if I add a keyframe over here, and this is them being idle. So initially I had them sort of hopping around, but I think their normal idle state should be a little bit more subtle, and then as they hit, as you leave them for a bit, another idle state can kick in where they're hopping around, a little bit agitated. So this barely needs anything. Like, we can move the chest up a tiny bit. We can lower the arms. There's nothing final about this. It's just what occurs to me. And we can, I don't know. We can have them bob up and down on their toes, maybe. It's not much. Originally I had the head moving, and you end up with a bit of a bizarre head bob if you exaggerate these motions too much, which isn't necessary to do. I don't know. And you can check this at any time and just be like, okay. Yep, they're kind of doing mid-air push-ups, but that can be pretty slowly, just simulating some basic breathing. That's all that really needs to happen. Should their knees move? Perhaps. So if we grab the leg, and we've got this bounding box, so we know exactly where everything is. And obviously this isn't hitting the bounding box entirely. I'm not too fussed about that just at the moment. Grab that, grab the other leg, bend it that way, and then tilt, like, the whole body, I guess? That way a bit? It's too much. It's way too much. What does that look like? Okay, so the feet kind of move, which shouldn't really happen. There we go. So now that's happening. I'm fine with that if you're fine with that. That's what we got. I'll work on this. You see, it doesn't take too long. There we go. So that's now the idle animation. That's all I had to do. That's the wonderful thing about this. I can refine stuff without undoing all the work I've already done. If you know if it's any good, I can swap things in and out. If I decide this player needs to be slightly more detailed, if they're a bit pixely, and they're not too bad. They zoom right in, and only here do they start getting a bit jagged. Don't really know how sharp I want that to look. I can just replace it with slightly denser pixelage, and it'll be fine. Right, so that's my idle animation. If we look at the animator, which is a big old thing, so I'll put it over here. Okay, then this is basically what I've got. So the entry level is falling for no particular reason. Idle can move to falling, move back from falling, and the transition phase will transition between the rotations and the positions of the limbs of the sprites. Just according to this, it's all programmatic, mathematical. There's no sprite work involved or anything. If you climb straight up, that's an animation that starts immediately because you want to instantly go into a jumping phase. That's crucial to having something fluid, is not letting animations continue past the point the player expects something to be happening. So they both go back into idle, but maybe they can go into something else, moving maybe, if the player happens to be moving at the end. Just add an extra transition and put some checks to ensure that they're moving. I've got a moving checkbox that already does that. Climb down goes into falling because you're usually above open air when you're climbing down, and moving, on the other hand, is a whole sublayer where you start moving. You go from idle to start move, then you go into move, and then you go back into either falling and an idle state, and you can also go from your start moving state back to a falling or idle state, depending on how much you've moved at that point, that sort of thing. So that's all hooked up already. The changes that I did were pretty basic. So now that's what they look like. Oh jeez. Yeah. So once you see it in action, you start to see what you need to do differently in order to make it work. So I'm not quite there yet, but that's going to need some work. But it's fine. It's fine for now. Let's zoom this camera in. Get back there, Inspector. Nope. Nope. You're going to stay where you are. That's fine. I respect that. Yes. But yeah, I just did that. Look at me, creative powerhouse. And yeah, more animations, more designs, more textures, more features. Get the lighting sorted. Get the hip part of the outfit rendering, and this will be wonderful. Fix whatever that is. Yeah, that's no good. That's the bounding box is smashing into the top somehow, because I haven't. Yeah, it's it's janky. It's not there yet. This is first attempts. Hooray! Look at this. Whee! Yeah, I think this just doesn't play nice at different speeds. I need to find some way of turning off the collision during these sorts of phases, so that it doesn't get caught up on edges and things. That is pretty fun to watch, though. I could keep that going for a while. I'm just going to demonstrate this super quickly as OBS keeps crashing as it can't deal with recording and running Unity and everything that's happening all at once. One of the things that I've taken into account is that everything's a physics object, so if I want to, I can grab this this building and turn off its kinematic, which means it's somehow not influenced by, don't know how that works. But anyway, there it goes tumbling, which is quite fun. All the stuff inside just falls into a puddle. I can turn off gizmos. Whatever, you get the idea. So that's quite fun. Going to play around a lot with designs that require you to do stuff like that. I'm sure that'll be a huge laugh. Alright, on to the name. So on the name side of things, I found the best way of doing it was to list everything that appeared in any of the themes that I was trying to approach, and just see what came to mind, try and come up with interesting, catchy combinations. So on the heat side, you got fireplace, burnt coal, heat, warmth, flame, cinder, things like combust, immolate, and other long, unwieldy words that wouldn't really go. So yeah, I had to play with things like that, but on its own there isn't much. Honourable mentions go to things like a tinderbox, which is literally what you are, a person with a fiery personality in a flame, but I think those first two syllables have been ruined forever. Trailblaze exists, which would work quite well. Blazing trails, actually finding paths through things, and you're on fire. But I think that's already been taken by a game on some indie game website. So on the other side, you've got ice, cold, snow, frost, chill, wind chill, icebox. Yeah, a house out in the snow could be an icebox. Nah, I don't know. Yeah, buildings are a theme as well, but I didn't know how to. That was my attempt at fitting those in. But again, there isn't much you can do with just that. So combining them, I thought, well, I've got action words that use the two: fire, thawing, melting, ice. But both of them leave me kind of lukewarm. There isn't much to say. It is what's happening, but it's not the whole picture. So I brought in other themes. You've got the notion of I want the game to take place going down into a chasm. So chasm, rift, separate, divide, that sort of thing. So yeah, ideas for that were basically on the fire side. I mean, I just ended up with things like fire rift, which would be kind of cool. I think something already exists elsewhere. Saints Open again. Snow Rift, which I think is a snowboard game for the Oculus Rift, so it doesn't quite work. Nothing that combines all of them, but I did like the word Rift. Yeah, it's very instantly powerful, and it says a lot of things all at once. On this side, maybe something like fuse, which is like using fire to fix things. Because you're also I haven't really thought about how that ties into the themes, but there's something there. But it means too many other things. It's kind of confusing. I guess weld would also be a word. Weld. But I couldn't think of a way of fitting this all in. I kind of went off on one on the fire side, and thought that there are like outsider words as well. For instance, outsider, or pariah. So an idea, of course, was fire pariah. Fire pariah? Yeah. No, probably not. Or even pariah? 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 As in like a pyre? Like a funeral pyre? Big burning pyre that's also a social outcast? Let that sink in. Pariah. You could even go so far as to say like a heathen, in which case, like, well, it's got heat in it already, so that's half your job done. So maybe you could bold it and have that in a separate thing. Heathen. It's just heat hen, isn't it? Heat hen. Yeah. That didn't last long. What else did I come up with? So on the heat front, there's like, you got like the heat death of the universe. One thought I had was, well, why couldn't we have like an apocalypse sort of scenario, but without, not necessarily everything dies, instead some things live, so it's like a heat life of the universe. Heat Life, game title. I'm gonna play some Heat Life. It got some cringes, so that doesn't work. So we've also already got the best pun category. We've got the most unintentional series of words. So then I just thought, well, how about extremes of temperature and such? So what are you? You're exothermic, endothermic, thermic something, hypothermia is like an extreme temperature sense. So there was that. There's already something called hypothermia, and then I thought, that's kind of a theme as well. Everyone's quite cold, so that might have something to do with it. I asked around, like, anybody know any words that mean extreme temperatures, not necessarily hot or cold, just the far extremes? I didn't get any useful responses. So in the interest of having my cake and eating it, I went with thermia, which I thought was kind of nice. Like hyper, doesn't really matter. You can add to that what you wish. It seems a bit whimsical to me, a bit like Enchantia or something like that. So I've gone with thermia like that, which I think is just avoiding, like, it's a little bit pompous, but in a nice way. It actually has something to say. I think the hyphen gives it a kind of investigate more, and it's different. I haven't seen that much, if at all. So different is always, there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm quite like this at the moment, because it instantly brings to mind like extremes in that state, other words that end in thermia, of which there are only really two. So that works quite well. There you go. Thermia. I don't know how you pronounce it. You can pronounce the hyphen if you want. I don't mind. And then in terms of like how that would look, I got this kind of like icicle with a fire on it. It looks a bit like a snow cone in the literal sense. Might need some refining, but I like the idea at the moment. There you go. That's the name I've gone with for now. Let me know what you think. Right. Yeah. Cheers for watching. Nice long video. I'm going to work on the movement controls primarily before next time. So look forward to those. I will be looking forward to it as well. See ya.